Well, once again, welcome everyone welcome everyone who's joined us tonight for Science Pub. I'm Dr. Sarah Bois with the Linda Loring Nature Foundation. I'm very excited to introduce tonight's speaker, Dr. Yingying from Northern Kentucky University. Yingying and I have known each other for a long time, worked as grad students together, and I'm very excited to hear more about this project that we collaborated on. Tonight's talk is the role of phenology in plant invasion on Nantucket. So thank you, Yingying, for joining us tonight.
Great, thank you for inviting me. So let me share my screen. Okay. Are you able to see my screen? Okay, great. So let's start. Yeah, I'm happy to really introduce a project I collaborate with Sarah from the past few years since 2022. And we look at how the invasive species take advantage from phenology for invasion on Nantucket Island. Before I move to the major topic, I just want to give you some background. First, just to clarify the definition of invasive species, because sometimes we heard different kinds of definitions and names, like we talk about the non-native species, indigenous species, invasive species. But actually for a species to be invasive, it is, of course, it should be non-native, which is not originated from this local area. And it also need to cause the either economic or environmental harm or to human health. So basically it is harmful non-native species. So we call it invasive. And also we know that a biological invasion cause damages worldwide, and also including ecological and economic impacts. Like here is a study showing the cost for biological invasion in the United States from 1960 to 2020 report cost, which is about $1.2 trillion, which is huge amount of money to manage the invasive species. So of course that's lead to a concern, in the future under, climate change, environmental changes in the future, we might have to spend even more money. So we have to get a better understanding about biological invasion to see how we can more efficiently manage those species. But not about just the biological invasion itself. Actually, currently our environment is in double jeopardy. So which means we're under stress of the invasive species, but we're also under climate change. We experience dramatic climate change. The problem is there are studies showing that climate change can accelerate introduction and spread out of the invasive species. And while we have warming extreme events, it can also change ecosystem and making them more vulnerable to invasion. So that's why we probably expect to see even more reduced ecosystem resiliency and also negative impacts on biodiversity. So that's why it also indicate that we have to take urgent action to really understand and also to inform management to mitigate those impacts. However, so far from most previous studies, we focus on understanding some mechanism from invasion and impacts, like how they might reduce biodiversity, how might they be aggressive, growing pretty fast, or how they might produce even harmful chemical to harm other native species, or how they can outcompete native species. But we really rarely think about actually the phenology, which is the timing of plant life cycle events. For example, in our temperate region, we typically see bud burst, flowering, leafing out in spring, like what we are seeing in this time. And in the fall, we see fruiting, leaf coloration, leaf drop. And those are really a great indicator for environmental changes because they have clear responding to warming, extreme events, and also urbanization. So they are really good traits for us to understand how plants might have different strategies, which allow them to better adapt to environment, even the environmental changes. And also because the timing really matters. From from phenology, we can also better understand how and when the different species start to allocate the resources, how they change the community composition because they might show up in different time. So along the different season across the year, you might even see different composition across the time scale, and which can also affect the biodiversity patterns and also think about species interaction, because this is actually not just about plants. It's also about animals interacting with plants. So you can imagine, right? While the flowers show up, they provide the food source for pollinators. And of course, the plants also benefit from pollinator occurrence. Is this like for ecological perspective, but for economic impacts, we also care the timing of especially native species because they provide vegetation products, which can affect the food industry, vine industry, ecotourism. So this is also we want to see how invasion might even affect from this economic perspective. Yeah. And actually in recent year, we start to see studies that shows the phenology may play an important role in facilitating the invasion because invasive species can take advantage from their timing as like a privilege. So for example, there's a study published in 2020. They compare, I think they compare the native and non-native species flowering time and fruiting time. And here you see the dark spots. Those are for non-native species. And also they are in the left side of the graph, that shows actually they do show earlier flowering and also earlier fruiting than the native species. I think the study focused on northeastern United States. I think like probably from Pennsylvania state, if I remember correctly. And there's another study, they also look at phenology, also compare across multiple native and non-native species, and also across different type of growth form like trees, shrubs, and wildflower, herbaceous wildflowers. They also show really large variation in their phenological responses to temperature. So here in this graph, in the right, the graph, the y-axis, actually, those are phenological sensitivity, which means how many days, I think this flowering time or the leaf out time, how many days the phenology will change based on the 1 unit degree Celsius change in warming. And the negative, which means they're moving earlier because of warming. Yeah, so, but you can see that across different species, they do show the variation. Even they all showed earlier phenological shifts, but they do have, show different levels of responsive to warming. Anyway, yeah, so, but actually, I'll say like years before, well before those studies, recent studies shows up, there was a review paper actually already raised this idea, including hypotheses how invasive species might take advantage from their phenological traits comparing to native species. And generally, they talk about 4 kinds of hypotheses. This just modified from the figure from the paper. Let's see, from the top, the first is vacant niche, which means if you look at the demonstration, the graph, the red curve representing the invasive species. So just representing the invasive species can occupy the open time niche, temporal niche, where they can have the leaf out, the blooming to use that open resource to compete with native species. And the second, the priority effect, which means generally we do expect to see earlier leafing out time or blooming time from invasive species because they can still use this early resource that native species they don't use much. And the third hypothesis, which about invasive species tend to have a longer growing season or reproductive season, which allow them to better compete, maybe to generate more offspring, seeds, or better interact with other species, help them dispersal, or that involve actually a lot of strategies. And the last hypothesis, which is about how they respond to climate change. And generally, the hypothesis can expect the invasive species shows a stronger response to climate change, which allows them to better adapt to future environments. So those are the hypotheses we are interested in testing in our region because you can see in the most studies, actually they kind of focus on particular region or particular species. So those hypotheses haven't been not really well tested across different species or different regions because different every week we have different interests, we have different concerns of different species. So anyway, so that's why we have this project. We want to focus on Nantucket Island to test those hypotheses, to increase our knowledge about invasive species to help inform management. I guess I don't have to introduce about Nantucket Island to our audiences here. But one thing I want to mention that why it is important we need to know better about invasion here because Nantucket Island that is home of globally rare sand plain grassland and a coastal heathland plant community. So which means we do have some rare species, rare plants and wildlife which rely on this native environment in this native communities. So and also because this island other space, which allows them to, while we manage this large land, we also need to know better about the invasion. That's why we have this project. So this project is about understanding the role of phenology in shaping the planning vision on the climate change at the Nantucket Island. And the major goal is to assess phenology and the responses to climate change among different native invasive plant species. And hopefully we can develop a phenology profile for native invasive species so we know which species generally they come up later or earlier. And we also want to identify if like what kind of dominant mechanism for those phenology advantage for invasion, like based on from the four hypotheses, which might be true for our region, for our community, so we can put specific target when we manage those lands and invasive species. And finally, we want to inform conservation management and also create some information for the public engagement. And yeah, this project was funded by Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative for 2 years. And we also use a lot of lands from all those kind of collaborative landowners. So to address this question, we set up some observation sites across this island. You can see there's a map showing we have 9 sites across island. We want to capture, kind of give us like a variation to capture this variation across island for all those species, target species. We kind of target to shrub species because it's kind of a little bit easier than herbaceous species, and also which they also have a bigger concern for the landowners. So those are the native species and invasives we kind of interested in our projects. And to and at each site we do have regular visual observation to look at phenology. Yeah, especially Sarah and Libby and also many volunteers, interns, they contribute to this huge effort to collect information for 9 species across 10 species across 9 sites. And for every species per site, we try to look at include 3 individuals, so which give us some variation representing that particular species in that location. And we observed 4 vegetative phenofaces, which include bud break, leaf unfolding, color leaf, and falling leaf. So including both spring and fall phenofaces. And also 4 reproductive phenofaces, including abundant flowering, fruiting. So flower buds, open flowers, fruits, and ripe fruits. Yeah. And yeah, so here I will share some results based on the ground observation. So we started was setting up the plots, the sites in fall 2022. So we have the 2 full year from 2023 and 2024. And here I'm showing the 2 phenophases in spring. The left one, the left 2 panel, that's the bud break dates for 10 species and in 2 years. And the right 2 panels represent the leaf out dates. Actually, those are first leaf out dates for that particular species in across all the sites we have. And here the red ones are invasive and blue ones are native. And you can actually visually see because the x-axis, the left is early, because that's the time, the number that is day of year. So if you see the dots or box fall on the left, which means they have early phenology. So generally you do see, especially at the bottom, you do see the 4 invasive species, they have earlier bud break and also leaf out compared to most native species. They do show relatively on the right side of the panel. So from this information, we can say we do have this evidence supporting our hypothesis, showing the priority effect. So, which means invasive species, they do take advantage by grow leaves earlier in the season to use more resources, which also allows them to compete with native species because when they grow leaf early, they create shade, which can even block the sunlight for native species, can impact their photosynthesis. Okay, so what about the flowering, the reproductive activities? So again, we also have this flower buds and open flowers across all species and 2 years. And visually, actually, you can also see that there's not really significant difference. There are some variation, right, cross species and even within species, but actually overall, we didn't really see significant difference for the timing of flower buds and open flowers between native and invasive species. So here we say we didn't find evidence supporting priority effect for the reproductive perspective. Okay. And let's move on to this. So here I just list all the phenophases, 8 phenophases. So here, yeah, let me just walk you through those 2 panels. Here's just like a general summarized phenology between native and invasive across 2 years and across all 8 phenophases. Again, the x-axis, that's time, day of year. The y-axis just list 8 phenophases. The order actually kind of show like the sequence from bottom to top, that's representing they usually start from bud break, leaf out, flower buds, open flowers. You can also even see the pattern where you see the box plots at the bottom, they always show the early, like on the left bottom, they show the early phenophases. And this box plot is representing overall, so we include all the data, no matter which species or which individual. We just want to generally understand, do we see the strong difference between invasive and invasive cross size, cross species? And again, we still find evidence. If you look at the bottom, left bottom from the 2 panels, in both years, we do see the earlier bud break and leaf out from invasive species. But if you move up to other phenophases like the flower, red fruits, and the leaf phenology in fall, generally we don't really see the significant difference. Especially we don't really see priority effect. So it's just we just find strong evidence showing the priority effect for the leaf early in spring, not in other phenophases or other seasons. Yeah. Okay. And so this is just about the priority effect. And what about another hypothesis about niche breadth? So using the calculated, determined the leaf out date and leaf coloration date, because that shows the start of the green season, also the end of green season for a particular individual. We use that information to calculate the green season length, just how many days the species sustain their green leaves, so which allow them to do the photosynthesis, to allocate resources. And this is for 2023 data. And here shows the growing season length, so how many days. So you can see again, bottom four invasive species, they do show much longer growing season length than other native species. And okay, and then let's move on to flowering. So what about the reproductive time periods? So here we calculate like based on our records, we are able to determine how long that particular individual sustain the flowers, open flowers, which allow them, to be active in reproduction. And also again, you see the bottom, actually here we see the 5 invasive species, they do show longer flowering season than other species. And then move on that we also compared the fruiting season, how long the individual, hold the fruits in that year. So we here we don't really see large difference, but you still see, again, generally you still see the bottom fours, actually 5 actually. Actually Scotch broom, they also have pretty long fruiting season. So anyway, yeah, so here we still see the evidence showing that longer fruiting season compared from invasive species to native species. So generally you can say, yes, invasive species had a longer fruiting season and reproductive season than the native. So there's also the evidence showing that that support hypothesis C about niche breast. Invasive species does have a wider niche breast than the native species. And this is the data from 2023. And I think I also have, yeah, the data from 2024. We do have very similar results. So invasive species does have longer growing season, a longer flowering season, and also for some species, they do have longer fruiting seasons. Yeah. Yeah, so I think so far those are the results from the ground observation. People just go out to visually check every individual repeatedly across the whole year. So that's a lot of work. But other than that, we also put a time-lapse camera at each site, and which allows the camera to take hourly photos to shoot the view, which include both native and invasive species in the view, so can have this time-lapse time series of the photos showing the seasonality. We can also extract information from the time series of the photos across the whole season, whole year. Yeah, so yeah, here's just the demonstration visually showing you how the photos look like across the year from the beginning of the year to the end. Visually, you can even see the increase of the greenness and also red color in the fall. Actually, it's pretty fun to look at those changes from the photos. I'm thinking like, do I want to show you the videos before I show the data or after? I guess I want to show the videos before that, because I think it's really fun to watch the video showing the changes. So I have 2 students working with me this semester to make use those photos to make the time-lapse video. So we can really visually check the seasonality in the short time. We can even determine when might be the good timing to change to show the difference, or which also allows us to better or more accurately determine, oh, this is region for this particular species. So let me see. Before I show the data. Yeah, so those are the video. I have 2 videos for you to share today. Again, because I have 2 students, so each one of them made 1 video, so they have a kind of slightly different style, but I feel like I like both of them, so I don't share. And each video is for 1 site, and you will see this like time-lapse video, and we also tried to label the interesting timing. You see the difference between the native and invasive phenology. So let's play this video. Okay, so there's one video and there's another video for another site. It gives us a little bit different combination of different species. That's another video. Are you able to hear the sound from the video? Because I feel like my student always sound really interesting music. The match was the movement.
We couldn't hear the sound.
Oh,
If you
sorry about
can hear-
that.
That's okay.
Well, I can share the video with you. I can send you the YouTube link because we haven't really published in the public yet. We want to make sure everyone agree, especially our the landowners. You agree to open this public, so we can share the videos.
Well, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna go away now.
Okay, so you're able to see my slides, right? Okay, so based on the camera time series, we are able to extract from those images to determine the GCC time series. Actually, GCC represent how much greenness we can see from the photo, which just shows the seasonality. So here, just one individual, the North Bayberry, just the data, one time series, and it shows that increasing greenness in spring and declining fall. And based on this pattern, we're able to determine the first dramatic change increase and then reach to the plateau and then first start to decline and reach to the bottom. We can determine the 4 phenological transition dates represent their phenology. The green up, maturity, senescence, and dormancy date. And we can do this for multiple individuals across the same site and also across all the sites. My student Catherine Murphy, she did a lot of work to extract those phenological information from the photos. And here's just one example showing, we are able to get this time series for multiple individuals across the sites. And we already have the data for 2023, we just haven't updated for 2024 yet. We only process first half of the year. We haven't finished process the second half, but we will definitely do that soon. Okay, from that data, can we still test the hypothesis? Actually, yes, we can test the priority effect because we're able to compare the green updates. And from the camera, I think this 2023 data, we can we show that actually, yes, again, actually all 5 invasive species, actually 6 invasive species, they do show earlier green updates than the native species. And we can also compare maturity dates. That's when they reach to the maturity level, high level greenness. And we still see kind of earlier dates for invasive species, but we do see the smaller difference, right? And then based on the green up and maturity dates, we can also calculate another metric, which just shows how fast the greenness developed. So which we call them green up slope. While we have the higher slope, which means they have a faster green up development. And here we can also compare how fast the green up the invasive native compare. But actually from this comparison, we noticed that actually really interesting. There are 2 species, 2 native species, northern bayberry and black huckleberry. Of course, all native species, they showed later green updates. But for the 2 native species, they showed also very late maturity date compared to all other species, which also gives a smaller slope, which means they do develop the greenness slower than other species. And this might indicate those 2 native species can be vulnerable to invasion because they have been late for the beginning of the season and also to the end of spring. And while they develop the greenness slowly than our species, they can be vulnerable. While other species develop the canopy, they create shade. So that's why actually it indicates the 2 vulnerable native species from this type of information. So next we want to, I want to say so getting back here, we already test hypothesis B and C. And next we want to test hypothesis D about the climate change, their response to climate, but we don't really have enough data in our island to really quantify the responses. So we used all the available information from Eastern United States, I would say, kind of North America actually. We used community science data and also herbarium specimens. I have 2 students, Alice and Bianca. They helped annotate the iNaturalist photos and also herbarium specimen, digitized herbarium specimen photos to extract the biological information like phenology, like do we see flower, do we see fruits, and then convert those information to ecological data to quantify phenological responses. So this is the tool they use. We use let's see, the image and which is a application which allows us to load the photos. So you can see the right side, that's the interface of the image and which is a small app, but we can load like thousands of photos to the one by one, and we can just screen each photo to answer the question like, do you see bud, do you see flower, do you see fruit, and do you see young fruit, do you see ripe fruit, but we can design what question we want to answer, so which allows us to convert the information from photo to useful information we can analyze. And Alice and Bianca, they did amazing work. They spent one summer to annotate 4 plant species, 2 native, 2 invasive, with over 50,000 images, which is a lot of work. Because that image is also cross like over 100 years, especially for herbarium specimens. So we do have pretty old specimens available. So those are the 4 species we focus on: black huckleberry, low bush blueberry, those are native. And we also focus on Morris honeysuckle and multiflower rose. We choose those 4 species because those are the 4 species with the highest number of records available. So, and also I don't think we had more time to process other species, but maybe in the future we will work on other species. So here you can see those are the records we have, and also the number indicate I think the top number is that's iNaturalist records number, and the bottom that's herbarium specimens, how many herbarium specimens available. And the dots just shows the location of those records for species. Yeah, that's a lot of large data, especially for multiple rows. Okay, and using that information, we're able to compare the phenology first. Here we are looking at the flowering time and also fruiting time across 4 species within the ecoregions where all 4 species occurred. Actually, we didn't find a significant difference in the flowering time. Although we can see low bush blueberry actually has a earlier flowering time than our species. But generally there's no really significant, like we didn't find any evidence supporting a priority effect. Actually, this actually kind of matched with what we found from the ground observation, right? But one thing I want to point out that actually, if you look at fruiting, you might wonder why we have so long, like the purple, the box and the vowing curves. We found multiple rows actually, they are able to hold the fruits for almost a year round. So that's why we see many foods available in the early year, but actually they probably come from the previous year. So, but they're able to hold the fruits for a long time, which probably can facilitate the species in action, providing food for birds, but also, of course, which will facilitate their seed dispersal. Yeah, so which is actually, I think, a really interesting finding from this data source. We also compared the duration because, well, we didn't find significant difference for overall like average date, but if we are able to determine, because we have kind of large data for different ecoregions, so we can quantify the beginning of the flowering and end of flowering, so we can also quantify the duration, right? So we can test another hypothesis about niche breast. And here we are able to quantify, which species will have a longer flowering season. Like for example, on the top panel, 2 panels, the right top, we do see, I think that's black huckleberry that has the longest flowering season. And the bottom, you do see, again, that's actually same results from what you saw from previous slide, the multiple rows, it has the longest fruiting season. But again, that's just based on whatever we captured from a photo. The seeds doesn't have to be from the current year, probably especially in the early season, probably come from the previous year. But again, there's no evidence showing, I would say, fully support hypothesis, but I do see this strong evidence for multiple rows have a really long fruiting periods. Yeah. Okay. And then, partially supported hypothesis, not really fully supported. And then we are able to use this large data to quantify how they respond to warming and spring. I think this is for flowering time. So we are able to quantify how many days the flowering time will change associated with 1 degree Celsius warming in spring. And here the bar just shows how strong the sensitivity would be. Again, they're all negative, which means they will be earlier associated with warming. And I think, and also we compared the sensitivity across 6 ecoregions where all species occur. But again, we didn't really find any clear pattern. That's why I say, like, for native species, you look at the blue bar for 2 native species, but we might find they show like either lowest or highest responses to warming across those different ecoregions, which actually does not support hypothesis D, like we expected the invasive species, shows a stronger sensitivity because we thought that they might benefit their adaptation. But then I thought, well, I feel it still makes sense because if the plant, they shifted their flowering time too faster, either too early or too late, they still get risk. If they're coming out too early, they might have risk of the frost. If they will come out later, of course, they may lose the chance to really successful pollinate, finish their reproduction. So I feel like now this, when I look at, I feel like the invasive species they might be actually smart to be kind of in the middle. They actually, which might help them to reduce the risk. But again, I feel like it's still an anecdotal um information. So I think we definitely need more information to look at how exactly they vary in their response to warming. Um, yeah. And here's just the map showing the phenological affinity across different ecoregions, across the four species. Uh, Actually, we initially we thought there might be some spatial pattern, maybe, particular population that might have the, particular response, but actually we didn't find strong evidence in their responses, the spatial variation, probably for invasive species. We found some southern ecoregion that have a stronger sensitivity, but actually overall, I don't think we have significant data showing they have strong spatial variation. But anyway, we still see variation. So which means the conservation, when we think about the responses, when we think about actions, specific action, we have to consider the context, especially local population context. Okay, I think I want to summarize the take-home messages from all different kinds of data sources, approaches. And we generally found that invasive species do generally have early vegetative phenology. They have an early bud break, a leaf out, and also the longer green season and reproductive period compared to native species, which probably give their advantage to compete with native species. But we realize actually invasives do not always have the highest sensitivity of warming in the spring. Um, we don't know how exactly really benefit their adaptation, but we just I think we needed to do further investigations. And we also found the native species, especially, two species, North Bayberry, black huckleberry, they have generally late spring phenology and also uh, potentially lower ability in tracking the changing environment can be more vulnerable than our species, which might require more conservation priority in the management. So that's why I think general recommendation would be we can do some early season removal treatment because invasive species, they are active early, which means that's the best time, probably best time to do the removal. You can better identify, oh, this species are active, and also you might have small impact on native species because they're not really active yet. And we recommend to give higher conservation priority to the most vulnerable native species. And in the future, we also want to look at the variation across sites because that really matters the specific site specific management. And also we probably also want to consider how species interactions might plays a role that facilitate invasion. Because actually during the screening of the iNaturalist photo, I found those really interesting pictures showing the birds eating the multifibrous seeds. I forgot the date, but it looks like probably like not really growing time periods. They are probably just winter time, so which provides food for birds, which is good, but also they can spread out the species pretty quickly. Yeah, I think that's what I have, and I really want to thank everyone, especially Sarah and Libby, who contribute to data collection, maintaining the cameras, sharing all the data with me, and also the funding source, which support this project, and also, of course, the landowner, which allowed us to set our cameras and also go to the site to collect those information, which is really helpful for us to gain this knowledge. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Yingying, so much. It's really great to see the whole project come together. And, obviously we saw a lot of from collecting the field data. Libby and I saw a lot on the ground, but it's really exciting to see it all come together with the images, the other iNaturalist data, and certainly the videos were really exciting to see. So for those of you who are still on with us and not at town meeting today, please, if you have any questions or comments, please add them to the chat, and or the Q&A. We have a question. Okay, so it says, I'm going to read this out so that it's part of the recording. It says, I realize that this data refers to invasive species on conservation properties on Nantucket, but what can private homeowners do to protect native species? It is easy to remove invasives from private property, but how can we increase native plants on our own properties where we can't find them available as plant sources? Yeah, we have a harder time finding native plant sources. Okay.
Hmm.
So do you have any ideas for homeowners how we can make recommendations?
Um, yeah, I thought you said, yeah, it's pretty easy to remove invasive species, if you already identified as invasive. But how you can maintain the native species, uh, I think especially I think the the landowners, they provide the precious land to preserve those native species. It might be a potential native species source. I don't know, Sarah, do you think that's a way? I don't know. Do you share it with native species with the local residents?
Yeah, so I will say we don't encourage people to dig up our plants, but the Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative as a whole, it has been really interested in this as an issue, as a topic, because we certainly would love people to support native species for a number of different reasons, right? Just general biodiversity, helping native insects, native birds, and especially to prevent more planting of non-natives, especially invasive species. So there are some efforts to try to do seed collection and grow out, but we haven't solved the problem completely. There are some nurseries on the island that have native species, but they're not Nantucket genotype. So I think that's the best effort right now is that the native species, even if they're not Nantucket seed sources, it's kind of a first step. Of course, we people can collect seeds of not from rare species, but people can collect native seeds and try to grow some of their own. That's been popular. One other thing, if you don't mind, Yingying, that I can add is that I do think if you have a yard where there's variation in habitat, where there's some shady and some sunny spots and some maybe areas that are get less regular moisture or something like that, I think making sure there's some variable conditions in your yard because we have found with some of the native species, um, even as Yinging was pointing out, like some of them might be more vulnerable if they can't track a change in the environment. And slight differences in shade and topography and soil moisture might offer just a little bit of variation to withstand whatever that environmental change is that year, if that makes sense. We basically, variety is the spice of life. So we like to say that a little diversity is good. So biodiversity, but also diversity of habitat type too might help if that makes sense.
Yeah, you have really many good ideas. But I wonder, like, do you see any like a seed collection efforts on the island and or like sharing the native seeds with the residents?
Yeah, so our colleagues at the Nantucket Conservation Foundation, they're the largest landowner on the island with the most conservation land. And they've been doing a lot of seed collection and grow out for their own use, like for restoration. So they collect, seeds and propagule materials in one property to be used in another property, perhaps. And they've had a lot of success in that. So I think that's kind of proving the ability to do that. And so hopefully at some point they'll be sharing that knowledge and maybe at least sharing some of the seed sources as well. But I think they have to kind of take care of the work they're doing on their own property first. But it's a great effort. They did a fundraiser several years ago where they did seed packets from the property. And so I think it's becoming I don't know where you are, Yingying now that you're in Northern Kentucky, if it's similar, but it's becoming more popular here that people are more aware of native species and how easy they are to grow, especially in like with water scarcity and drought conditions, but also how beautiful they could be, in many cases and offer flowers and fruit and just variation in textures like throughout the
Yeah.
growing season.
Yeah, yes. I feel like the same thing here. Even on campus, we have many students who are interested in having native plant seeds, and they can. I know even that they're like curious, like how can we plant it? But I feel like they're native, they can grow pretty well. You just do, it doesn't really require many efforts. Yeah, just yeah, our students are
Yeah,
really happy to have them.
I completely agree. I have a few questions. I'm like looking. If anyone has questions, feel free to add. Oh, there's another question. Sorry, I missed this. With your research, have you seen any invasives that had the opposite change by decreasing with climate change? Oh, so any invasive species that are decreasing in with climate change effects.
From the species I work on, like a multiple rose, honeysuckle, we don't really see they are declining because of climate change because they are pretty aggressive. They grow really fast and they're able to, especially they're able to leaf start to bud burst or leaf out pretty early in the season. Like same thing happening in northern Kentucky here. Like every year we have always the honeysuckle is the first one, and multiple rose almost second species. They start to leaf out. They can even leaf out in February here. Yeah, it's really crazy. But I think I heard other species. I guess that might be garlic mustard, if I remember correctly.
I
Um,
was gonna say, Yingying, you should remember this from our research.
yes, that's Corey's project. We actually,
Yeah, yeah.
we had a model to predict future performance for different kinds of invasive species, and we were even surprised because we saw the declined garlic mustard in I forgot in northern area or in that
In like northern Maine, I think.
yeah
Yeah.
the northern
Like
area
the further north you go, like the garlic mustard is less
yeah
suitable with
yeah
climate change.
this is actually even unexpected for our research group but yeah but I think this is I forgot what the mechanism what is behind that. Sarah, do you remember that why they are declining? I kind of forgot the
I'm not
mechanism.
sure. I can't remember the specific mechanism. I'm pretty sure because garlic mustard is one of the ones that does well in understory forest too. So I think it was a combination of suitable habitat availability and
Mhm.
I guess air temperature. But I'm sorry, I can't remember the details. I'm sorry. I'm like a co-author on the paper and I
Yeah,
can't
me too.
remember the details. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
both
me too.
on
But
that
the
paper.
message is pretty interesting. Yeah, we did see prediction for certain invasive species, they show decline pattern. But that's still like a regions, particular regions, not like everywhere.
Yeah, I would say without being able to think of the specific species, I do think there's a few others that are as range shifting species that might be moving north. It's becoming
Mhm.
less suitable in the south, but I know I've seen those range maps that where as a species moves north, like the southern range is becoming too warm, but I can't remember which species they are right now, but I could find out. Another question is, are there any sleeper invasives that we should be on the lookout for? And if we find it, what should we do?
I mean, like a potential species might become more invasive later.
Yes.
Um, Actually, I don't know much about Nantucket Island, but I heard from a botanist here in our region. She actually collaborated with a lot of like botanic gardens. She keep asking people like, do you see any weird, plant? Because people have a lot of plants in the garden. If they see any plants start to be kind of crazy, start to be aggressive. She actually warned me that's the crab apple. Yeah,
Crab
crab apple.
apple?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, but she told me that's crab apple. And before that, she kind of years ago she talked about the Keller pear, like Bradford pear.
Yep.
Yeah, we have this very aggressive now. And but then she recently because we just had her in our seminar speaker in our university, she mentioned crab apple might be a potential future invasive species because she keeps saying this same information from different botanic gardens. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I think on the island, one of the things we've seen increasing are invasive grasses, so like
Mhm.
ornamental grasses. And I think some of that is with propagules pressure. The more that are planted in in landscaping, there's that much more pressure. And it's a, with our grassland habitats, it's a niche that is kind of ripe for invasion. So it's interesting, kind of keeping an eye out. The second part of that question is what you do about it. I would say report it. So especially if it's here on Nantucket, I'm co-chair of our invasive species plant committee. And so we always are um welcome information from people if they see something weird, like you were saying, Yingying, like something that's escaping a lot or something unique that you've never seen before. Either put it on iNaturalist, and if you have questions about iNaturalist, you can email me, or take a picture and email me and send it. I think just reporting it is good because then there's, even if you're not on Nantucket, local botanists and people are always interested in finding what those new plants are. Would you
Yes,
agree?
yes, I totally agree. Yes. Yeah, iNaturalist has been a pretty good platform reporting the occurrence of different kinds of species. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a few other questions. I'm interested in, some of this was looking at the different hypotheses for invasion and using Nantucket Island as a microcosm. Have you used similar methodology in other areas for similar projects, or can you talk about some other areas of your research?
Um, actually, I do have, well, I kind of collaborated with a similar project here. My collaborator from Purdue University, there's a PhD student. She will look at native invasive species across kind of water gradients, like the compare dryland and wetland.
Mm-hmm.
And she also focused on kind of this like herbaceous and shrub species. Actually, she just started collecting the information since the spring. Yeah, she will come soon. But she was here, like I said, her plus. Uh, so I don't really have the official data to share, but I can definitely tell from what my experience here from the past 3 years. Yes, we do see pretty early leaf out, bud break and leaf out from honeysuckle and Waterford rose. We also have autumn olive here, oriental bittersweet. Um, I will say I saw pretty similar pattern as what we found from Nantucket Island because they are actually same invasive species.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even compared to the species, native species, we compared to spice bush, pawpaw tree. Those are the common native shrub here. Um, yeah, again, I do see significant early leaf phenology, but not flowering because like the spice bush, they flower pretty early. Pawpaw tree also flower right now. They actually already flower. So honeysuckle, they don't flower that early. Also, muddyfur rose, they usually have
Yeah.
summer flowers. So, yeah, so I think the most advantage they're taking is from the early vegetative growth to, so they're able to do a lot of more photosynthesis, and they can also create shade. I saw here actually, I have a photo, yeah. I had a photo like one big honeysuckle shrub, the bush, and with a small, like a poor spice bush just under the honeysuckle shrub. I was like, wow, the poor spice bush. So I just took photos, just want to show this example of how, to
Yeah.
compete with each other, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point to make for those of us thinking about Nantucket. We focus on shrubs, but we don't have that many areas where there's a lot of trees. And so some of our shrubs are actually can be kind of quite big, and that is the tallest thing in some of our areas. And just like you're saying, with that example with the spice bush, if our some of our bigger shrubs leaf out much earlier, then they'll potentially shade anything else out in the understory. So
Yeah, and also I noticed, I wanted to have this data, but I haven't really started to officially collect the information, but I pay attention to every spring. I want to see if, the invasive shrub, the shading, if they have any effect on the herbaceous flower, because we have spring ephemeral here.
yeah.
Yeah, so I want to see if the like early honeysuckle shade might affect, reducing, uh, spring ephemeral.
Like the trilliums and
Yeah, like
things like
spring
that.
beauty, yeah,
Yeah,
spring beauty, trillium, yeah, like we have many spring ephemeral, like
that's really
the
interesting.
trout lily, yeah.
Cool. Well, we have to wrap up, so I'm gonna say if there's time for if there are any more questions. Okay, I think we're good. So I am going to be we are recording this. I'm going to be sending out the recording to everyone who registered. And if you're watching this recording later, my contact information is everywhere. So if there's any additional questions from someone later, please feel free to contact me and I can parlay questions to Yingying. Or if you want to give your email out, I think it was on the, it might have been on the slide.
Yes.
But we welcome questions after the fact. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today and sharing the research. I'm really excited to see, especially, how the data came together and some of those outreach materials as well.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to share any information from the project. I'm really happy to talk to anyone, who are interested in this topic. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much again, and we'll be in touch with everybody about upcoming science pubs. All right.